Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve Namaseevayum from iPass. I'm the Senior Director for our Supplier Relationship Management team here at iPass. Today I'll be giving you an update on the current status of the network, how it looks today, and also what's roadmap for the future. Thank you. So just before we jump into the network slides, just wanted to give you a very brief overview of what iPass actually does. So our strategy, we call it an unlimited, everywhere and visible strategy. So it's effectively around how we are providing a connectivity solution to millions of users around the globe. We're a software company. Our technology platform is called iPass Smart Connect, and we're headquartered in Silicon Valley. We've been a public company since 2003, and as you can see on the left here on this slide, we currently market over 60 million hotspots around the globe in 120 plus countries, and we do that via partnering with 160 different network operators. Okay. So first off, I'll just talk about some definitions. When it comes to describing our network, we have three different types of hotspot inside. Commercial hotspots are typically public venues that people can go into. Community hotspots are typically people's homes, and so what you have in a situation where there's a community hotspot is an access point, a piece of equipment inside that's broadcasting to SSIDs, and one of those SSIDs is available to the public. Okay. And then the final definition that we have is an open access hotspot. So these are free, curatable amenity hotspots. So our technology is able to navigate through certain access or login procedures for Wi-Fi that can seamlessly connect you into a hotspot when it's free. Next, I'll talk about some of our hotspot growth over the last few years. So on this slide here, you can see the line going from just over 2 million hotspots to 60 million hotspots again in 3 years. Okay. And then finally, just a global map depiction, so you can see around the various continents how that 60 million hotspots are divided up. So in North America, we have just over 35 million hotspots. In Europe, it's only 21 million hotspots, and then you can see in the Middle East, 270,000 near enough. In Asia, 1.65 million hotspots. South America is 1.58 million, and then we're approaching 1.2 million in Australia and Oceania. Next, I'll talk about the different venue types. So whilst we do have a large number of venues, it is the world's largest Wi-Fi network. We also pride ourselves on the fact that we also have a lot of strategic venues. So if we look at something like airports, 800 plus airports, we tend to have very good coverage in the world's top 100. So I believe we're covering in excess of 90% of the top 100 paid for airports. And then in Inflight, I'll talk about this in a bit more length later, we're approaching 3,000 jets, and that drives a significant amount of value and usage for our business as well. Okay. Train services, we have about 800 trains around the globe. And then the other piece here, I've talked about local businesses, but also in hotels, they've always been an important part of the iPass footprint. So of those 60 million hotspots, we have in excess of 90,000 hospitality venues. And then finally, the community hotspots as well. Okay. Here I'm just, I mentioned Inflight WiFi earlier. So here I'm just giving you a flavor of some of the partners and some of the airlines that we work with. So you can see along the bottom, GoGo, Panasonic, United, and T-Mobile or Deutsche Telekom. iPass has actually been partnered with GoGo for in excess of 5 years, with Panasonic for 2 or 3 years, similar thing for Deutsche Telekom. What's exciting, I think in around Q3 of 2016, we actually signed a deal with United Airlines as well, so a direct relationship for about 750 US domestic aircraft as well. Okay. And then up above you can see some of the airlines that we are partnered with. We have more than this in integration, so we have about 20 airlines today going through our integration process. So every network that comes into the iPass network has to go through a stringent integration process to make sure that it's meeting our specifications meeting our standards. Hospitality, I mentioned earlier as well. So this is just giving you a flavor of a lot of the brands that we are partnered with. So 90,000 plus hospitality venues again across the globe. Again, this is an area that's been important to iPass pretty much from day one. So we see a lot of usage, a lot of traffic, a lot of sessions, users going through hotels. So we do spend quite a bit of time, focusing on this area, trying to increase the hospitality coverage as well, and working with brands directly now. Trains as well. These have become a very important part of our business. I'll talk a bit more. We've got quite a bit of new train services coming through in our roadmap, but you can see some of the train franchises around Japan, across the UK, and also in Denmark. And yes, we talk about 160 plus network partners. Here it's just a flavor of some of those. So you can see across the various continents who we're working with. Gogo I mentioned. Again, that relationship's been there for 5+ years. But we've worked with many of these others, such as BT Wi-Fi since 2003, Deutsche Telekom since 2006. So many of these operators have been in the iPass network for more than 10 years. Something I wanted to draw special attention to, a lot of the effort, time is spent on actually trying to bring in meaningful strategic footprint as well. And I think that the thing that we'll see over the next 6 months, a couple of years, is the emergence of a strong European in-flight Wi-Fi network. So at the turn of 2016, iPass signed a deal, a contract with Deutsche Telekom. Deutsche Telekom has a joint venture with Inmarsat, where they're effectively building a combination of satellite and air-to-ground technology for an in-flight Wi-Fi network. And they've signed up a few airlines, as you can see along here. So I'm just showing you, some of the ones that are roadmap to come into the iPass service this year and at the start of next. So this is currently in deployment. I'm hoping that basically we'll launch in the next 30 days with Lufthansa. We also have Austrian Airlines coming through and Eurowings coming through. And Deutsche Telekom was also signed a deal with the IAG group and plans to launch British Airways probably around the summer of 2017, sorry. And yeah, I mean, all things going well, we launch in the next 30 days, but we're forecasting that we'll have more than 200 jets enabled by the end of 2017. I'm going to talk next about what's coming. So in terms of forecast for the network, the different markets that we're focused on, the different types of footprint. So and I'll do this across the Americas, Asia, and then Europe as well. So if we look at the Americas market, we're paying a lot of attention this year, especially in the US, to hospitality. So we are looking for, and we've identified several key hospitality partners with some of the key brands, and we're currently engaged to sign contracts and try and bring them into the footprint this year. So we think we'll get through a lot of that in the next 2 quarters. We also have in-flight Wi-Fi targets as well. I mentioned earlier United Airlines. That's not included here because that's already a signed deal as far as we're concerned, but we are in the process of trying to bring that on board inside the next, by the end of, or midway through this quarter. Okay. And then finally, more small, medium businesses as well. So commercial venues, more retail type footprint. We plan to bring that on board in the US. One other market that we're particularly keen on doing more in this year is Canada. So we are working currently with a couple of companies that have a mixture of public venues as well as hospitality. So there are two specific targets for us. We think we'll basically be able to do something more in the sort of in quarter 3 of this year and in the final quarter as well. Okay. And then finally, turning our attention to Central and Latin America. So we actually already have a company in integration for several hundred hotspots down in Mexico, but we've identified another that seems to have some valuable footprint. It's around 4,000 locations, hotels as well as public venues as well. Okay. In Brazil, it tends to be one of our strongest markets when we look at usage today in that region of the world. We've identified a couple of carriers that we're trying to bring on board that have several million commercial and community Wi-Fi venues as well. So we have that slated for the second half of this year. Okay. And then finally, Argentina was a market that we identified at the end of 2016. So one of the good things about our technology is that effectively we're able to obtain a live scanning list of where people go to. So that's what our connection technology is doing. And we identified that a lot of our users are actually traveling to Argentina. Hence, we put some focus on that. We were able to identify what the most important network was to have, and subsequently we're currently in negotiations for that footprint. Just switching to EMEA. We're currently focused on basically trying to win some, a large community Wi-Fi estate with a large conglomerate in Europe that would bring in about 12 million hotspots. We're hoping from Q3 onwards. So we think that would be very exciting. We also have an engagement going on in Germany right now that would bring in an additional 1 million community Wi-Fi hotspots. So if you look at our footprint today in Germany, it's in excess of 20,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. Those hotspots are actually very good. They're very strategic venues. It includes a lot of hospitality. Accor, for example, is the largest mid-scale plus hotel chain in Germany, and we have that in our footprint. We have the majority of the airports and a lot more hotel chains as well as retail chains and outdoor Wi-Fi. But the community, we believe, would be a good addition to that, as we've seen in the UK, where we have 5.5 million hotspots, and in France, where we have more than 10 million hotspots. When you can get good blanket coverage of community Wi-Fi, that tends to add some value to the coverage. Okay. I mentioned rail earlier. I showed a slide on some of the train franchises that we are working with. We've identified a global market leader. We're currently working with them to see what we can do to try and turn on footprint starting in this quarter. We've engaged with them for some while. They operate in key markets. Again, they're a market leader, but they have several train franchises here in the UK. They operate in Germany, in Nordics, in the US. So yeah, I think this will be a good addition. We already work with the other existing market leader, Nomad. So this is the other one, if you know this space. Okay. And then finally, we're also focused on trying to land an agreement with a leading in-flight Wi-Fi technology provider that operates out of Europe, but they are global. So they work with in excess of 10 airlines. I've identified Singapore and Japan Airlines as the ones that we'd probably start with. So we don't currently have a timescale for that, but we're going to hopefully get more clarity by the end of April as to what's possible and when. Okay. One point I would mention on this slide, just again back to the in-flight. So Singapore and Japan Airlines, we currently have some transatlantic fleet within our network today, but we don't have 100%. So essentially what we're trying to do here is just increase our coverage within these particular airlines, as well as new airlines that this partner would bring along. And then finally, we're talking about Asia Pac. So we've got, I guess, quite a lot on our plate as far as basically trying to add more Wi-Fi footprint in some of the strategic markets within that region. So we've been spending some time in Australia. That's where I was earlier in the year, looking for good partners, carriers and hospitality. We've identified a couple. We're doing some POCs for footprint that they have around the region. They aren't typically Australian-centric, but we're looking to try and sort of bring that on as well. We also think there's a good curation opportunity from what we've seen down in Australia. So we're trying to leverage our technology there to increase the size of our footprint. In India, we've recently signed 2 contracts with 2 of the carriers. India is a market which I think is evolving pretty quickly from a technology standpoint when it comes to Wi-Fi. I think it's fair to say it's been a fairly immature market up until now, but there seem to be several players on the market that are growing the footprint aggressively. So good news for us. We've signed 2 players that are in the integration right now, and I think by the year end we may have 1 or 2 more as well. The good news about India as well is that the Taj group of hotels, iPass, is currently working to bring on. It's about 70 properties that they have in India as well. So it looks like we're in the final stages of a proof of concept before those hotels can get lit, but that's pretty good for us. Okay. And then in China and Hong Kong, we're working with an operator to bring on about 100,000 public hotspots this year as well. We already work with the 2 leading operators, China Mobile, China Telecom. That's been for several years. So this third one, again, we identified through our technology. It does look like it would be a useful addition to our footprint. So, you know, we're targeting having that in by the end of year. Okay. Something I mentioned earlier about strategic venues. So if we look at these next 3 markets, Malaysia, Thailand, Japan, and actually Indonesia as well, you'll see hospitality in the venue type. So we are trying to, we already work with several of the operators in these markets. So true in Thailand. In Japan, we work with both the leading operators, NTT Docomo and with SoftBank. In Indonesia, we also have a couple of providers. But the thing that we think would be most helpful to that footprint would be the addition of more strategic hotels. So we've identified a couple of partners already in the process of trying to get those signed up. And finally, in Singapore and Malaysia. So in Singapore, we've been spending a lot of time of recent with our existing carriers to bring back in more footprint. So there's been a bit of a technology change up in the last couple of years. So footprint has has gone out. We're in the process of trying to get a lot of that footprint back again. So that will be across a lot of the high footfall areas, so the malls, the marinas, as well as some of the venues, the shops inside as well. So yeah, in the process of effectively recertifying a lot of the network as well as signing up new providers in strategic locations as well. Okay. So I think that concludes the presentation. If there's any more information that you would like, then feel free to reach out to your iPass account manager or to myself if you have any of the details. I think we're opening up for questions as well, so those can be submitted via the question feature on your screens. Okay. Give it another minute or so, but nothing's come through yet. Well, it looks like no questions have come through. Again, if there are any after, feel free to contact myself or your iPass account manager. But I'd like to thank you for your time today and wish you a good day. Thank you.